So I realized over the weekend I still owe you guys a little more George R.R. Martin on the channel. Well, hey, a Lannister always pays their debts. But before we do, guys, let's take a quick little look at the second book of A Song of Ice and Fire. People often claim to hunger for truth, but seldom like the taste when it's served up. When you tear out a man's tongue, you are not proving him a liar. You're only telling the world that you fear what he might say. He who hurries through life hurries to his grave. But the unseen enemy is always the most fearsome. The brightest flame casts the darkest shadow. For the night is dark and full of terrors. So many vows, they make you swear and swear. Defend the king, obey the king, keep his secrets, do his bidding, your life for his. But obey your father, love your sister, protect the innocent, defend the weak, respect the gods, obey the laws. It's too much. No matter what you do, you're forsaking one vow or the other. In the end, words are just wind. Only a fool humbles himself when the world is so full of men eager to do that job for him. But was there ever a war where only one side bled? And perhaps that is the secret. It is not what we do so much as why we do it. Power resides only where men believe it resides. And oftentimes, a very small man can cast a very large shadow. I will hurt you for this. I don't know how yet, but give me time. A day will come when you think yourself safe and happy, and suddenly your joy will turn to ashes in your mouth, and you'll know the debt is paid. I am the sword in the darkness, and I am the watcher on the walls. I am the fire that burns against the cold, the light that brings the dawn. The horn that wakes the sleepers and the shield that guards the realms of men. He has a song. He is the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire. Hey, what's up, bookworms and bannermen? We are back again to talk a little Song of Ice and Fire. Today, guys, we're going to take it all the way back to 1998 and talk A Clash of Kings, book number 2 in the Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. This is the hardcover that I originally read off of. This is a nice illustrated edition. Also got the folio side edition. I've got 2 paperback editions. Guys, yes, I love this series quite a bit. Now, this book was very, very popular upon release. 1999 Nebula Award winner. Or actually, it was nominated for Nebula and it won the Locust. But it's one of those things you kind of look back on, you're like, wow, how is this not considered like a book that was just as good as the original? And I think in many cases it is, and we're going to talk about that today. So I read this immediately after I finished A Game of Thrones in the year 2000 when I discovered the series. The book number 3 had just come out when I discovered the series, and I ran through all 3 of those back to back to back. But I recently talked about A Game of Thrones on the channel, and I said I want to go ahead and talk about A Clash of Kings as I'm doing this reread. So I'll be doing A Storm of Swords, rereading it next month, and kind of slowly be rolling those out before I move on to the next one. But these are reviews I've waited a long time to do in the channel, guys, because this series is extremely special to me, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, all the hatred and white hot takes had kind of died down from the television show. You could talk about the books again. I feel like we've finally reached that point where you could talk about the books again. That's why I wanted to do it. But again, guys, this is going to be spoiler free. I do want to say that if you have not read book number 1, you haven't watched the show, you know nothing about it, I might mention some things that happen in book number 1. I'm not going to tell you anything that happens in this book. I'm not going to tell you anything that happens after. I'm not going to tell you anything that happens on the TV show. You're safe from that. But I would recommend that you read book 1 before you watch this, because I am going to have to mention some things from that book. But as for spoilers, we'll talk about that another time. I'll mention at the end of this video, we do have some plans for that. But with this book, guys, A Clash of Kings, we got to begin by talking about what is this book about. Now, a comet the color of blood and flame cuts across the sky. And from the ancient citadel of Dragonstone to the forbidding shores of Winterfell, chaos reigns. 6 factions struggle for control of a divided land and the Iron Throne of the 7 Kingdoms, preparing to stake their claims through tempest, turmoil, and war. It is a tale in which brother plots against brother and the dead rise to walk in the night. Here a princess masquerades as an orphan boy, a knight of the mind prepares a poison for a treacherous sorceress, and wild men descend from the mountains of the moon to ravage the countryside. Against a backdrop of incest and fratricide, alchemy and murder, victory may go to the men and women possessed of the coldest steel and the coldest hearts. For when kings clash, the whole land trembles. Guys, it takes all the way back to 1998. This is A Clash of Kings, 25 years ago. Wild to think about, really, that it's been that long. But guys, we got to get into it because I've got a lot to say about this book. We're going to begin, like usual, talking about what makes it good or bad. I always like to start with the good because, guys, there is a lot of it. The characters continue to be the most unique and fresh and compelling in all of the fantasy genre. I think these are some of literature's greatest characters. Now, I think that the returning characters get a lot more layers, and there was a lot of new characters we're going to talk about. Let's talk about those returning characters first. I think Tyrion gets a little more power in this, and you see he has an opportunity to see, okay, if you had that extra power, would you actually do good, or would you still just kind of go the Lannister way? Would you just kind of follow? Would you want to make your father happy? That kind of thing. Would you do what's good for the realm, or would you do what's good for your family? And there's lots and lots of ideas like that presented for Tyrion when he does have a little bit of extra power this go around. And Catelyn's trying to play peacemaker between, warring brothers. I think it's an interesting role for her because in the first one, I know the first book, she annoyed a lot of people. And I said, I can't say that, as a grieving parent, I'm not sure if I would have reacted any differently. Really, I don't know. I don't live in this fantasy world, thank God, because I don't think that I would make it very long. But with Catelyn in this one, I think there is a little bit of a different role for her. She had one of the new characters in her have a big plot line in this book that I think is very, very enjoyable. Sansa continues to just be put through absolute hell with Joffrey, the now King Joffrey, and that obviously is under contention. That's a big point of this book. But her basically having to, I don't know, kind of, without giving away too much, but kind of slow roll the I don't even know the words to use here for Sansa. Just read it, guys. That's all I'll say. Sansa, she's going through hell, but she has a plan. And then Daenerys is kind of adjusting to this new life with a little bit of power and envy. There are going to be lots of powerful men who want to marry her for her dragons, obviously. And you know what? She's probably not that bad to look at either. That probably doesn't hurt very many things. But you get lots of new things to her. You get lots of layers with her and Jorah. Jorah Mormont, I think in this one, actually, in my memory, I didn't remember some of the stuff. You get a lot more kind of feedback about his past in this one. That you kind of got peeks at it in the first book, but you get a little bit more about why he is in this situation he's in. I love that for him. Jon Snow is going beyond the wall, trying to learn more about Mance Rayder and the supposed threats. We do have these whole deal with White Walkers. Are they just myth? Is it really happening? He saw some shit in that first book, and he wants to explore a little bit. Now he has a actual blessing of the Lord Commander to go beyond the wall and see what is out there. Arya's got to continue life on the run while kind of containing her true identity. That's always a lot of fun. I think her stuff in this book in Harrenhal is some of the best stuff in the entire book. And I think the side characters from the first book get some more time to shine this round. Gendry, who is really just kind of cameo, I guess you'd say, in the first book, he gets a lot of time in this book as he is with Arya, and they are both like on the run together. And I think that's a fun duo in this book, is the two of them, because Gendry was a character I never really expected to get a lot more out of when I read that first book all those years ago. But you do get a lot more run with Gendry in this one. It's really good stuff. Renly obviously has a much bigger role. He's just kind of reduced a small council. He wanted to basically crown himself king after what happened to Robert, and you get where that's coming from. Well, that's just kind of cranked to 11 with this one. Renly, very, very popular with the people, But, does he actually have a claim here? Stannis is finally present. We heard so much about Stannis in the first book, but you actually get to see Stannis right away. The book actually opens with Stannis and a mysterious red lady that we'll talk about here in a minute. But Stannis is a character I obviously am bending the knee to, because in my opinion, he is the rightful king. But, that's obviously what this book is all about. It's all about contesting the throne, right? Varys, I think, Varys gets a little more time this go around, where I felt like you got a lot of Peter Littlefinger and Ned in the first book. And this one, I think, you get a lot of Tyrion and Varys. They kind of get an unholy alliance, I think. You get to know a little bit more about Varys, how he got in the situation he's in. Get to see there might be a lot more to this dude than just, self-serving interests. And Varys obviously has some of the most banger one-liners in the entire book. He has some stuff that's just so good. It was hard for me to make that introduction for this video without it just being nothing but Varys lines, honestly. Just so good. Theon gets upgraded to a POV character this go-around. And Theon, you want to talk about a 180. Look, I always thought that Theon was kind of interesting in that book, but he takes a completely different route this book, and it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy what he goes through. And that begins what I think is one of the greatest fantasy arcs ever written, is Theon Greyjoy. Believe it or not, I really do. And you'll see why as we continue to roll through this series. But I think you get introduced to a lot of new characters in this. And here's the thing, is a lot of people are going to be like, God, there's already so many characters. He writes them so well. You guys going to be like, give me more of them. Give me more of them because you do it so good. Brienne is introduced as a part of Renly's Kingsguard. And I think Brienne's a character that you get a taste of in this book. I think she really finds her stride later in the series, but she has a really great introduction here. And I think she's a character, like I said, she does kind of team up with Catelyn a little bit, and they have an interesting little adventure, I think. But she's interesting in that you get this kind of this character. She's like a 6.5 foot tall woman who's not very attractive and is just as good a fighter as all the men, and might be the best sword fighter in the kingdom. I don't know. We can talk about that down below. That's always a fun character. Who's the best fighter in this universe? Well, I think we're not all on the same timeline. It's kind of hard to say, but at this time period, I think it's between her and Jaime, and that would be a fun matchup to see, right? But Davos is also a POV character gets introduced. He is basically the hand of Stannis, who is making his claim for the throne. And Davos is a smuggler, Han Solo type. Obviously, you get the smuggler, heart of gold kind of thing. You get that Han Solo connection. Obviously, I don't think that was an accident. I mean, I think even George was a Star Wars fan, sure. But that's always a comparison I make. It's not quite got the cockiness or the swagger of a Han Solo, but that, like I said, that smuggler with a heart of gold wants to do right by what he considers his Lord King, and that's something I'm on board with. Loyalty is something that cannot be looked down upon, in my opinion. Melisandre is pretty much the first sorceress style character, because we've heard hints of magic in this series. But this is the first one where I feel like you get to see the Red Priestess from Asshai and see some of these different. Is it magic? Is it just illusion? What's going on here? And you get to see all those kind of things, and it pops off quick. The prologue with her really does pop off really quick with what this character is all about. Has one of the best lines, "The night is dark and full of terrors." I love that line, so good. But Melisandre, yeah, that's a very layered character that you guys are going to get to know a lot more about. But I love that he continues to build this cast, but I don't feel like anyone really feels left out. Everyone feels like they get equal time. I don't feel like you ever get, oh God, can I get back to this character? I feel like the pacing is perfect in this book. I never once feel like I'm missing a character for too long. I never feel like I'm getting too much of one character, not enough of another. I think he does a really good balance, especially when he's introducing all these new characters, and these characters that you'd only heard about in name in the first book getting a little bit more page time in this one. And it's handled perfectly. He's a master at slow rolling this. And this isn't a short book, guys. I mean, I think it is actually bigger than the first one, but it's just, you can't stop turning the pages because the way that he paces these books is just so amazing. But this one, guys, it's about the War of the Five Kings. Now, this is kind of a big deal because I think as fantasy fans, we're all about a little civil war when it comes to who is the rightful king, right? So Joffrey has been crowned the king officially. Obviously, the Lannisters don't want the truth to get out that he is a bastard of Jaime and Cersei, an incestual bastard, even worse, right? So he would have no actual claim to the throne. So they're trying to keep that secret safe. Right now, they can just label everyone as, just treacherous for even suggesting it, and just kind of, burn everyone at the stake, really. Put their heads on spikes if they actually bring it up. So he still has, obviously, the best foothold. He's in King's Landing. He's got all the power right now. But Stannis, who I think is the rightful successor of Robert, Stannis, in my opinion, is the actual rightful heir if we're going by old-fashioned rules. Now, Renly, he declares himself more worthy than Stannis because, well, doggone it, nobody likes Stannis. And I'm handsome and I'm, charismatic. And he's one of those kind of people who's like, hey, who says we've got to do it the way that we always did and go by age or what order we were born? Let's go by popularity. And you know what? It might work because he does get the support of Highgarden through marriage. And I think that's a big, big baller move right there. So I think him being on the small council already, he knew how to play the game a little bit for sure. And now it's just a matter of the fact of, okay, can I amass a big enough following to actually first take out my brother and take out his army, and then go take King's Landing. So he's got his work cut out for him, but he's got Brienne on his side. He's got a lot of power on his side. I think he's actually in a pretty good place of power. Robb was declared king of the North by his bannermen. That's one of those things where I'm like, look, I love Robb Stark. I love him, but I'm like, you don't really have too much of a claim here, I don't think. But you know what? If everybody else is throwing their hat in the ring, why not? He's got an awesome, awesome direwolf, and he's he's heir to one of the most popular regions of the Warden of the North. This is a guy who's going to have a little sympathy because of what happened to Eddard Stark. And I can see why people want to follow him. They can feel like they can see everybody out there in the East and this down South are just acting like maniacs. Let's go there, restore order, and see what happens. And then you got Balon Greyjoy from the Iron Islands. Now, this is Theon's dad. And the thing about this was, it's kind of hinted at in the first book that the Iron Islands had a failed rebellion. They tried to do this once before. So this is one of those things where I feel like, okay, Balon's just being an opportunist. Everybody's going to be up in chaos. While they're all paying attention to each other, I can sneak in the back door and actually pull this rebellion off the right way. And he's got one of the greatest fleets in the world, right? So it makes a lot of sense why he would go ahead and try this while everybody else is looking at each other. I can kind of sneak in and flank them when they're not paying attention. So a medieval civil war, like I said, guys, this is one of the things that we read fantasy to see. But guys, the action in this one is incredible. This might have the best action sequence or battle in the entire series. The Battle of Blackwater Bay is still one of the coolest portions of any fantasy book I've ever read. And it's not just because of, well, I don't want to say, but there is some, let's say the color green might pop up a lot, but it's really, really cool, guys. It's an amazing story, and the unlikeliest of heroes and war leaders are the ones that kind of come through in that battle, and it's amazing stuff. And it's one of those things where, like I said, that I think that Bernard Cornwell might write the best action scenes, like when you get like a one-on-one duel. As far as like the battle in a bay with ships and land, I have never seen anything like this. It's never been replicated as well as it is done here. And it's just done in such an amazing way, because I think he continues to do that thing where you're like, okay, these people, I'm going for this army. This invading army's coming. And then you're watching these guys, you're like, oh, that's right, we're going. We're going to go take it. We're going. And you're realizing, oh, yeah, I like both these sides and they're about to fight each other and I don't want anybody to die. So George is so good at that, getting you to root for both sides and not wanting anybody to go, because he writes characters so gray and so right down the middle, I think, that you can see both sides of it. I mean, even some characters that you would say are a little more morally black, you can still look at some of this stuff and be like, you know what? Making a lot of sense right now. Because I know every time that Tywin talks, I'm like, I know you're supposed to be like this big bad guy, but you know what? I'm starting to think you might have a point here. So I love that George is able to do that. He gives us both viewpoints from both sides, has us cheering for both, has us rooting against both. He does it all the way around. But the shocks and turns in this, guy's just as good as a Game of Thrones. Now, I said, after I read a Game of Thrones and I picked this one up, I said, okay, after what happened with Ed, you can't shock me anymore. Well, I was wrong, guys. That's actually one of my coldest takes ever. Freezing cold, because he actually will surprise you so many times in this. And it isn't just character deaths, guys. That's the thing that's kind of misrepresented about the series. Everybody thinks it's just the character deaths that make this series shocking. Not at all. There's so much more going on here. But I think the prophecies in this one really, really come to light. Daenerys' stuff especially. A big spotlight here with Daenerys, I think. But the politics continue to be unmatchable. No one is able to touch politics and in-world politics in their books the way that George does, where it's just two characters at a table and the stakes have never been higher. Tyrion, Littlefinger, Varys, these guys are masters of their domain, and you cannot compete with them politically. They're just that good. And their chapters, anytime those three are in a room or two of those three are in a room together, It's just great stuff, guys. A book just soars. But is everything perfect? I mean, I think so, but there are some things that might bother some readers. Now, look, same as always, Martin isn't here for your feelings. If you're easily triggered by violence, abuse, all kinds of abuse, lots and lots of bad things, this isn't going to be the series for you guys. He doesn't, you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. George doesn't care. He bases all this stuff off of real historic events, and, there's some things that you might say are outdated. Well, yes, this is a medieval book taking place in an alternate universe thousands of years ago. So, yes, there are going to be outdated things, just like there is in our own personal history, and that's kind of what he's going off of. Arya and Sansa still make some choices. I mean, you just want to strangle them, and I think that's on purpose. Honestly, like I said before, think about if you're raised in nobility your entire life, and then boom, it's just snatched out from under you one day. Are you going to handle everything like a champ? Probably not. Probably not. And you think about what the two of these are going through. These two girls are going through some really, really bad shit. They really are. So I'm going to give them a little leeway on acting like children sometimes. The sex scenes are uncomfortable, guys. But again, it's not uncomfortable like in like, oh God, that cringe, it's so cringe. I don't mean like that. I mean like George just writes them to be uncomfortable. And I think that's just part of it. So that's, again, these aren't things that bother me. They might bother other people. And that's why I want to bring them up. But again, guys, I have nothing bad to say about this book except that it ends, because it's just that good. So there we go. I'm really nitpicking when I get into the bad there. So why should you read it, guys? Look, if book one is the best book one in any fantasy series ever, this is the best follow-up to that, because I think this book is every bit as good as book one. For me, I just think the reason I would rank the first book higher than this one is for a dumb reason, guys. Nostalgia for one. And you will never, ever be able to replicate that shock that I got in book one ever again. You can still have shocking things, but even if I said he can still surprise me, you'll never be able to replicate that first time feeling of, oh my God, no one's safe. Like for really real, no one is safe. Not even your lead character is safe in this world. And I think that's something you'll never be able to replicate. So I think that's why book one will always be a little, we're talking like 1A, 1B basically with these two books. But I do like the first one just a touch better, but I can't really come up with a reason why, because this book is every bit as good. You actually see more of the world. You get more characters that I love, and some of my favorite characters in the series don't pop up until this book. And it's as good in every way. I love that he shows us new locations, keeps you guessing on alliances and betrayals all the way to the very end. You're guessing on stuff, and it's the most fast-paced, guys, that 761 pages will ever fly by for you. It's just amazing. It's an amazing book, and again, I can't find anything wrong with it, really. So you're asking me to pick, between book one and book two. It's like asking me to pick one of my favorite kids. It's really, really hard. You just got to go with nostalgia of your first one. You never forget your first, I guess. But how about some final thoughts before I go here, guys? Look, after the shocks of book one, like I said, I didn't think that he could surprise me again. He does. He does very much so. This is probably my 6th or 7th reread of this, because when it was just a trilogy, guys, like as soon as I would finish A Storm of Swords, I would just start over and read it again. And then I would alternate it with like Lord of the Rings and read it again. I wasn't reading a ton of fantasy like I do now. Back then, it was just like, okay, these are like the ones I got. These are the ones I love. These are the ones I get something new every time that I read it. And that's why I kept rereading these two series. But yes, even that many rereads, guys, I'm still picking up new things, new themes, new ideas, new little wrinkles, new things that I didn't know I was looking for. And we got to talk about the Houses of the Undying. Like I said, I'm going to be on Joanna's channel. We're going to talk about that. The thing with the House of the Undying, guys, is I understand that they gave you a lot of answers on the TV show, guys. A lot of these things haven't happened in the books yet. So here we are all these years later, 25 years later, people are still speculating about things that happen in the Houses of the Undying. Probably one of the most intriguing chapters in any fantasy book I've ever read. I know a lot of people said, oh, all the prophecies in Wheel of Time are really, really amazing if you go back and look at them. Yeah, but we got answers to those. So maybe it's hard for me to compare the different. Plus, also, I think that Jordan liked to throw a prophecy out every other page. With George, I feel like his are really. He's got some really great ones there, and we haven't gotten all the answers to those yet, obviously, since the series isn't complete. But yeah, it's enough to make you talk about it for 20 plus years. But again, as perfect as a follow-up book as you can have in any series like this. I was just completely blown away again. Like I said, I used to reread it all the time, but this was my first reread in 11 years, guys, because I read it again right before the TV show started. And I can't believe it. I can't believe it's just aged this well and just continues to be better every single time you read it. But guys, as for spoiler discussion, if you don't know, me, Madison, and Scott, the Bald Booktuber, we were doing the House of the Dragon after show. Well, since we've got 2 years between season 1 and 2, we've gotten together and said, you know what? Let's do some more Song of Ice and Fire content, and we're going to be doing spoiler discussions for each one of these books as we go along. So we're going to go back and do a Game of Thrones really here soon, and we'll be doing one for Clash of Kings before I get into my Storm of Swords coverage on the channel. But guys, thank you for being so patient with me all these years, waiting for me to do these reviews. Like I said, this series is incredibly special to me. This and Lord of the Rings, I wanted to take my time, do them right, and I feel like I've done that, at least so far. You know, this still has a ways to go, but I'm just overjoyed that there are new people picking up this series, because for so long people are like, well, if he isn't going to finish it, I'm not going to start it. And you know what? People like me, they will always wave that flag for Westeros. They're just going to say, you know what? Even if we never get another word, the 5 books that we've gotten are absolutely amazing, and I'm never going to apologize for that. So I love this series. I hope you guys too. I hope you love this book. I want you to drop in the comments and let me know what you thought about this book. Did you like it better than A Game of Thrones? I think that's obviously a fun discussion to have. But I don't think there is a wrong answer there, because those are 2 mighty impressive books. So drop in the comments, guys, and I will talk to you there.